Ceasefire with Hezbollah? Is that where we're going? Is that where this war is going? Well, that is the message tonight from Prime Minister Netanyahu, who made a major policy address to the people of Israel in the Hebrew language, calling for a ceasefire with Hezbollah that is going to the cabinet for approval. Let's hear Prime Minister Netanyahu in his 10-minute speech, which we're going to translate here, discussing why he's going towards ceasefire with Hezbollah. That's in South Lebanon, northern Israel. And we'll get some of the comments of mayors living up north and what they think about it. So here's Prime Minister Netanyahu.
ישראל, הבטחתי לכם ניצחון ונשיג ניצחון.
So he says, citizens of Israel, I promised you victory, and we shall indeed get victory. By the way, look at his body language. He looks a little nervous. He looks a little haggard. He looks a little bit more tired than usual, in my opinion. There's something stressful a little bit in this broadcast.
להשלים את חיסול החמאס.
We're going to continue destroying, and we're going to finish off the destruction of Hamas.
נשיב את כל חטופינו.
We're going to return all the hostages.
נבטיח שעזה לא תהווה עוד איום על ישראל.
We're going to promise, we're going to ensure that Gaza is no longer going to be a danger to Israel.
ונחזיר את תושבי הצפון בבטחה לבתיהם.
And we're going to indeed return the residents of the north to their home with security.
המלחמה לא תסתיים עד שנשיג את כל יעדיה.
The war is not going to end, he's promising us, until we reach all of the goals, the stated goals. He's setting us up to say that what I'm about to do, the ceasefire, is within that goal-attaining strategy. We're not changing that. At least that's what he's saying here at this point.
ובכלל זה, עד שלא נשיב את תושבי הצפון בבטחה הביתה.
And within that, I'm not going to stop the war. We're not going to stop the war until we return all the Jewish communities, all the residents of the north, to their homes.
ואני מבקש לומר לכם, זה יקרה בדיוק כפי שזה קרה בדרום.
And I want to tell you that it's going to happen just as it happened in southern Israel. So he wants to say that southern Israel, there's been a victory there against Hamas, although it's not that the communities have all gone back to normal life there, but he wants to say, just as I promised to fulfill my war goals in the south, so too I'm going to do it in the north. This is all in preparation of trying to tell us, but I'm going towards a ceasefire.
ידידיי תושבי הצפון, אני גאה בכם.
My dear residents of the north, I'm proud of you.
אני גאה ביכולת העמידה שלכם.
I'm proud of your ability to withstand all the challenges.
ואני מחויב לחלוטין לביטחונכם, לשיקום יישוביכם, לעתידכם.
And I am totally beholden to my promises. I totally have to. I must ensure your security and your future and your return to your homes.
עד עכשיו, הודות לגבורת לוחמינו בצה"ל, בשב"כ, במוסד ובמשטרת ישראל,
Thanks to all of our fighters in the Shabak, the GSS, that's Israel's like FBI, the Mossad, the Foreign Service, the police and the army. We have had tremendous successes in the seven-front war, which he calls the war of rising up. Okay, that's a nickname that he's given this war. He calls it the war of arising, of struggling for our independence. It's a kind of war of independence, he wants to say. And he now speaks about the seven-front war, and he's going to describe these seven fronts. The whole world is amazed and respects Israel for these successes in the seven-front war.
והם מקרינים את עוצמת ישראל ברחבי המזרח התיכון.
And it broadcasts Israeli strength in the broader Middle East region.
ראשית, בראש התמנון, באיראן.
Okay, so now he's going to list the seven fronts, and he says the head of the octopus is Iran.
השמדנו חלקים ניכרים מההגנה האווירית שלה.
We were able to destroy large elements in its air defense system.
מיכולת ייצור הטילים שלה.
Its production of missiles and rockets, we've been able to destroy those.
והשמדנו מרכיב משמעותי בתוכנית הגרעין שלה.
And we've been able to destroy a serious element in its nuclear capability, the nuclear production.
אני נחוש לעשות כל מה שצריך.
And I am very dedicated and single-minded to do everything
כדי למנוע מאיראן להשיג נשק גרעיני.
in order to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. So I'm dead set on stopping them.
האיום הזה תמיד עומד בראש מעייניי, וזה נכון היום ביתר שאת.
He says that this threat is always front of mind for me, and today even more so. And I can definitely say that I've seen Prime Minister Netanyahu talking about the Iranian nuclear weapon danger for 25 years, so it has definitely been on his mind.
שומעים את ההצהרות החוזרות ונשנות של מנהיגי איראן על כוונתם להצטייד בנשק גרעיני.
He says we can all have that consciousness when we just look at what the Iranian leaders say, which is that they want a nuclear weapon. And so the threat is very real.
עבורי, הסרת האיום הזה היא המשימה החשובה ביותר.
For me, the getting rid of this threat is the single most important thing that I have to achieve. And I believe him that this is really something that keeps him up at night.
כדי להבטיח את קיומה ועתידה של מדינת ישראל.
In order to ensure the continued survival and future of the state of Israel.
בעזה פירקנו את גדודי החמאס, הרגנו כ-20,000 מחבלים.
In Gaza, we destroyed the Hamas infrastructure. We killed 20,000 terrorists.
חיסלנו את סינואר,
We got rid of Sinwar.
חיסלנו את דף, חיסלנו את בחירת
We got Def. We got other top leadership of Hamas.
הארגון, והשבנו 154 מחטופינו.
And we've been able to liberate 154 of the hostages.
אנחנו מחויבים להשיב את כולם הביתה.
And we are indeed tasked, and we must return all of them home.
את 101 החטופים שנותרו בעזה,
The 101 hostages that are still in Gaza, we must return them.
החיים והחללים כאחד,
The living ones and the dead ones.
להביא קץ לסבל הנורא של משפחותיהם,
And to stop the horrible pain that their families suffer.
ואנחנו כמובן מחויבים להשלים את השמדת החמאס.
And we are obligated to finish off the destruction of Hamas in total. So I like this language much better than language I've heard from him before, which is there's no deals with Hamas. We have to destroy them in totality, and that is what we're obligated to do.
ביהודה ושומרון אנחנו מחסלים.
So he talked about Iran. Then he talked about Gaza. Then he talked about Judea and Samaria. Now he's talking about Judea and Samaria. This is where I live, right? The so-called settlements. I'm a so-called settler, i.e. Jews that live in the ancestral heartland of the Jewish people. So now he's going to talk about the front of Judea and Samaria.
מאות מחבלים.
We've killed hundreds of terrorists here.
אנחנו משמידים תשתיות טרור.
We are destroying a terror infrastructure.
ואנחנו פועלים בכל מעוזי הטרור. אין מקום שאנחנו לא מגיעים אליו.
And we are working in all the hearts, the headquarters of terrorists, and there's no place we don't get to.
בתימן,
I just want to say that when he's talking about Judea and Samaria, okay, he's saying that we are, destroying a lot of the terror infrastructures, but there's tons of terror infrastructures that are still here. You could see it with the naked eye, and you know that there's terrorists all around us, and there's tons of weapons around here. So, okay, it's easy to gloss over and be like, yeah, in Judea and Samaria, we're getting to every location. Let's not overdo it, Prime Minister Netanyahu. There's still a ton of work to undermine jihadism, and let's not forget there's the Palestinian Authority, which is teaching Israel hate every single day, and the Hamas, which still is extant in places like Hebron. So let's not exaggerate the case and say like we're taking care of business in Judea and Samaria when we all know that the terror infrastructures are still very much there. But on the other hand, there has been operations, and that's what he's pointing to. Let's keep going.
תקפנו בעוצמה את נמל חודדה של החות'ים, מה
Oh,
שלא
now he's
עשה.
talking about Yemen, and he says we attacked their ports of the Houthis,
הקואליציה הבינלאומית לפני כן. בעיראק,
and we're setting up a international coalition against the Houthis. And he kind of spoke about it rather quickly. Still, international trade has not returned to normal pre-October 7th levels. But okay, so the Houthis have been attacked as well, and now he's going to talk about Iraq.
בלמנו בהצלחה, אנחנו עדיין בולמים. התקפות רבות של כטב"מים,
We suppress all kinds of attacks of unmanned aerial vehicles that come at Israel from the Iraqi airspace.
וגם כאן יש עוד אתגרים לפנינו.
And here, too, there is still a lot of work in front of us, a lot of challenges in front of us. So if you think about what he's talking about, it's like he's like, Gaza, we did a lot, but it's not really done. Judea and Samaria, we did a lot, not really done. Iraq, not really done. Yemen, we did something, but not really done. So in all these fields, on the one hand, he's right, we struck at all of them, but it's not like the enemy has been destroyed in any of them.
בסוריה אנחנו מסכלים בשיטתיות את הניסיונות של איראן, חיזבאללה והצבא הסורי.
So in Syria, we are striking, undermining the efforts of Syria and Iran to, I think, arm Syria with rockets and to get rockets down to Lebanon through the corridor of Iran to Iraq, through Syria down to Lebanon. So he's saying we strike in Syria as well. And I can tell you from friends that indeed the Israeli army is in parts of Syria.
להעביר חימושים ללבנון.
Right, in order not to pass weaponry into Lebanon.
אסד חייב להבין, הוא משחק באש.
This is a major statement. He says, Bashar al-Assad of Syria has to know he is playing with fire. And this is a direct threat to a country's leader. And I think there's credibility enough for Prime Minister Netanyahu to show that he's able to strike at leaders hiding out in different places. And he's saying, Bashar al-Assad, you are playing with fire.
ועכשיו החזית השביעית, לבנון.
And yet in the seventh, he's enumerated all these fronts, and now he's going to talk about the seventh one, which is Lebanon. And here's the kabash.
חיזבאללה בחר לתקוף אותנו משם, ב-8 באוקטובר.
On the 8th of October, Hezbollah decided to attack us from there.
חלפה שנה.
A year has passed.
זה כבר לא אותו חיזבאללה.
And it's not the same Hezbollah. It's already been, it's a denuded, a much weaker Hezbollah. And yet they're still able to shoot tons of rockets at us.
החזרנו אותו עשרות שנים אחורה.
We pushed Hezbollah back tens of years. Does that make me feel much safer? Not quite yet.
חיסלנו את נסראללה.
We took out Nasrallah. That's fair enough, right? He you know, in a powerful operation, destroyed Nasrallah, who was hiding out in a bunker for years, and were able to destroy him.
זה הציר של הציר.
This is the axis of the axis. This is the heart of the axis.
חיסלנו את כל בכירי הארגון.
We destroyed all the top leadership of the Hezbollah organization.
השמדנו את מרבית הטילים והרקטות שלו.
We've destroyed the majority of their rockets and missiles.
חיסלנו אלפי מחבלים.
We killed thousands of terrorists.
והשמדנו את תשתיות התת-קרקע והטרור שסמוכות לגבולנו.
And we have destroyed the tunnels that are close to our border.
תשתיות שנבנו במשך שנים.
This is terror infrastructure, terror tunnel infrastructure that has been built over tens of years, and we've been able to destroy them and therefore push away the threat from the border.
תקפנו מטרות אסטרטגיות בכל רחבי לבנון.
We've attacked strategic targets throughout all of Lebanon.
והפלנו עשרות רבות של מגדלי הטרור בדאחיה.
And we've dropped, i.e. blew up tons of these towers in the Dahya in Beirut, which is the Hezbollah center. We've managed to destroy many of their headquarters.
בביירות רועדת.
The earth, the ground in Beirut is shaking. It's being attacked, and in other words, he's saying we have air superiority in Beirut. We're attacking in Beirut. We're attacking the Hezbollah leadership structure and their HQs, and we're in control there.
אזרחי ישראל, רק לפני 3
Citizens of Israel,
חודשים, כל זה היה נשמע.
just a few months ago, I think 3 months ago, he said this all sounded like crazy talk.
מדע בדיוני.
Science fiction.
אבל זה לא מדע בדיוני.
But it's not. It's not science
עשינו
fiction.
את זה.
We did it.
ואני מבקש לומר לכם,
And I want to tell you,
בכל רגע נתון של
at any given moment,
ניהול המערכה הזאת, אני מסתכל על כל החזיתות במקביל.
okay, so now he's trying to get a little bit political points, and he's saying, I am looking at it as a broad picture. I'm looking at all of these 7 fronts in a broad and total outlook.
כך נהגתי כשהחלטתי בתחילת המלחמה להתמקד בעזה.
That's why I decided at the beginning of the war to focus on Gaza, meaning to say I had consciousness about other places, but first I wanted to deal with Gaza.
ולא לפתוח חזית שנייה רחבה בלבנון.
Right, and not to open up a secondary front in Lebanon because we needed to focus on Gaza, according to him.
כך נהגתי לפני חודשים אחדים, כשבשלו התנאים לפנות צפונה.
And that's how I acted when it was time to attack in Lebanon. When the situation had ripened, I changed tacks to attack in Lebanon.
ואז החלטנו להתמקד בחיזבאללה.
And then we decided to focus on Hezbollah after we were done with the majority of the fighting in Gaza.
כך נהגתי בעקבות מתקפת הטילים מאיראן.
That's how I behaved with the missile attack from Iran.
כשבחרנו בקפידה את עיתוי התגובה ואת אופי התגובה.
And that's when I decided not to act, I'm adding, not to act impulsively, but rather to decide exactly when was to strike back and exactly where and how, the amount. In other words, a calculated response. I'm looking at the big picture, and that's why, we're doing it in a calculated fashion. And all the thing that he's coming to say is, look, I'm using all these calculations. I've got your best interests in mind, and I'm keeping an eye out on the whole thing. And that's why I have this new piece of strategy that I'm going to be revealing tonight, which is a ceasefire with Hezbollah.
וכך אני נוהג גם היום.
And now that's exactly with that kind of outlook, of total outlook, that's how I'm behaving today.
אני מסתכל על כל החזיתות במקביל, אני רואה את התמונה הכוללת.
I look at all the fronts in total, and I see the unified picture.
ואני נחוש לתת לחיילים שלנו, לחיילים הגיבורים שלנו, את מלוא האמצעים לשמור על חייהם ולהביא לנו את הניצחון.
And I am dedicated to protect our soldiers, protect their lives, and give them the equipment that they need in order to bring full and total victory.
ולכן אזרחי ישראל, הערב אביא לאישור הקבינט מתווה להפסקת אש בלבנון.
Okay, so here's the stuff. Here's the goods. He says, tonight I'm bringing to the war cabinet a suggestion, a deal to come to a ceasefire in Lebanon.
משך הפסקת האש תלוי במה שיתרחש בלבנון.
The length of the ceasefire will depend on what is happening in Lebanon. So I'm bringing this up for a vote. And now he's explaining to us what exactly this ceasefire is supposed to look like according to him. So he says, first thing, the length will depend on what's happening in Lebanon.
בהבנה מלאה עם ארצות הברית,
With full understanding with the United States, this is in a discussion with the Biden administration, and who knows, maybe already with the upcoming Trump administration.
על חופש פעולה צבאי מלא.
We leave to ourselves full right of any action, meaning to say we're not giving up any right to act in our own best interests. And he's trying to say that he has not given up the sovereignty to act and to take any war measures that Israel deems fit.
אם חיזבאללה יפר את ההסכם וינסה להתחמש, אנחנו נתקוף.
If Hezbollah undermines and does not fulfill their side and begin to arm themselves, we will attack.
אם הוא ינסה לחדש תשתיות טרור בסמוך לגבול, אנחנו נתקוף.
If they start building up infrastructure of terror next to the border, we will once again attack.
אם הוא ישגר רקטה, אם הוא יחפור מנהרה, אם הוא יכניס...
If Hezbollah fires a rocket, digs a tunnel,
משאית עם טילים,
brings a missile truck, a truck that has a missile system on top of it,
אנחנו נתקוף.
we will attack.
כן, אני שומע את הטענה, שאם...
Okay, so now he wants to get to the criticisms, because of course there are criticisms of ending this war too early. There's going to be very heavy criticism. There already is. We'll read about it in a second from mayors saying, like, we can't believe that you're, stopping this war when you have not ensured our security. So now he's going to address those concerns directly. He says, I already hear the accusations. If we enter, he says, here's the critique. If we enter into a ceasefire agreement, we won't be able to attack. we won't be able to renew the war. That's the concern.
אני מזכיר לכם,
But let me remind you, he says.
זה בדיוק מה שאמרו לי, אבל בדיוק. כשעשינו את הפסקת האש בעזה לצורך שחרור חטופינו.
Okay, so he says, this is exactly what people said about me when we went into the ceasefire deal, that we had a short ceasefire in Gaza in order to assure the liberation of some of the hostages. They told me that if I make a stop, I won't be able to start the war again, and the war will be over.
אמרו שלא נחזור להילחם.
They said we are not going to return to fight. If we have even any cessation of fighting, we're not going to return to fighting.
חזרנו גם חזרנו להילחם.
And yet we returned. Oh, yes, we returned into the fight. He's trying to say, don't worry about the ceasefire. If I feel the need to re-enter the fight, we'll do so immediately. And I'm leaving myself the options. All war options are on the table.
ובגדול.
We will strike and strike hard and big.
טוב, חיזבאללה יישב בשקט שנה, שנתיים.
Another critique that people say, Hezbollah is going to sit quietly for 1 or 2 years.
הוא יתעצם, ואחר
It will strengthen itself. It will rearm itself, re-equip itself,
כך הוא יתקוף אותנו.
and then it will strike at us. So what have we done by that, right? That's a very fair criticism. Like you're letting them rearm. And in the meantime, people are going to come back and live in the north, and then they're going to be under attack again.
אבל חיזבאללה יפר את הפסקת האש לא רק אם הוא יירה עלינו.
But however, he says they would have abrogated the ceasefire, and not only if they shoot at us,
הוא יפר את ההסכם גם כשהוא ינסה להתחמש כדי לירות עלינו בעתיד.
Hezbollah would have abrogated if it just tries to rearm itself. It's already going to run afoul of the ceasefire agreement because they're already doing something that is against that agreement, and so therefore Israel will be able to attack if they even arm themselves, he says to the critics.
על כל הפרה שלו נגיב בעוצמה.
And everything that they do to undermine the agreement, we're going to strike hard.
אני יודע שיש כאלה
There are those, once again, the criticisms. He wants to address the critics.
שלא מאמינים שנעשה זאת.
There are those who don't believe that we're going to strike hard, that we're going to make sure that Hezbollah conforms to the agreement, and that we're not going to be tough. We're going to be weak if we sign the ceasefire agreement.
אבל רבים גם לא האמינו. לא האמינו שניכנס קרקעית לרצועת עזה, ונכנסנו.
Okay, and he says, and there was a lot of doubt against me in the past. A lot of people didn't believe that we were going to go into Gaza with infantry and with troops on the ground, but we went in.
לא האמינו שניכנס לשיפה ולח'אן יונס, ונכנסנו.
They didn't believe that we would go into Shifa and Khan Yunis, and even more so wanted to stop Israel from entering Shifa and Khan Yunis, but we went in.
לא האמינו שמול הלחצים הבינלאומיים הכבירים
Nobody believed that we would be able to withstand the huge international pressure that we faced, that he faced,
להיכנס לרפיח ולפילדלפי.
against going into the Philadelphia corridor, into the southern city of Gaza, Rafiach. Nobody believed that we would go into it, but we went in.
ולא רק שנכנסנו, תקפנו.
Not only did we go in, but we went in with an attack, with a very serious attack.
ועוד איך תקפנו.
Wow, and how did we attack?
שלא האמינו שנתקוף בלבנון.
And there was a lot of people who didn't believe that we would go attack in Lebanon.
וגם שם תקפנו.
And also there we struck.
תקפנו בעוצמה ובתחכום שהפתיעו את העולם כולו.
And we struck with strength and with cleverness that surprised the whole world. And I think he's also referring to the beeper attacks and other attacks. So he's saying, like, we had a lot up our sleeve.
אז אחרי כל זה, אולי כדאי להתחיל להאמין.
And maybe it's interesting. He says, after all that, maybe you should start to believe in me.
להאמין בנחישות שלנו.
To believe in our strong will, our single-mindedness.
בדרך שלנו.
In our way, to believe in our way, to believe in our justice.
במחויבות שלנו לניצחון.
In our obligation to attain victory. Believe it, that I mean that I want to attain victory.
אז למה לעשות הפסקת אש עכשיו?
Okay, but why indeed to make a ceasefire now? He's asking, meaning to say rhetorically asking, he's asking in order to answer it.
יש שלוש סיבות עיקריות.
Okay, there are 3 reasons why Netanyahu wants to do a ceasefire now. And this is maybe the rational heart of this important policy speech.
סיבה ראשונה,
The first reason to have a ceasefire now,
התמקדות באיום האיראני.
in order to focus on the Iranian threat. He wants to deprioritize Lebanon so he could focus on the big and real dangerous threat, which is Iran.
ולא ארחיב על כך.
And I'm not going to explain further, meaning to say we got to take care of Iran and you can let your imagination run wild, but I've got to deal with Iran and not right now with Lebanon because Iran is the head of the octopus, the head of the snake, whatever you want to call it, and that's what I have to deal with right now.
סיבה שנייה,
All right, reason number two.
רענון כוחות וחידוש מלאים.
Reason number two is in order to give rest and respite and renewed energy to our fighters. And chidush melaim means renewing our stockpiles of weaponry.
ואני אומר לכם בגלוי,
And I'll tell you honestly,
כי זה לא סוד.
it's not a secret.
היו עיכובים גדולים
There was great delays in the transfer of weapons
באספקת נשק וחימושים.
and ammunitions and armament.
והעיכוב הזה עומד להשתחרר בקרוב.
And this delay in transfer is about to be relieved in the near future. Obviously, that is a hint to the relationship with the Biden administration as opposed to the Trump administration. There's going to be a flow of those arms right back into Israel.
נצטייד באמצעי לחימה מתקדמים שישמרו על חיי חיילינו וייתנו לנו כוח מחץ נוסף להשלים את משימותינו.
So we're going to soon be rearmed with important equipment, with high-tech equipment that is going to give safety to our soldiers to survive in this war, to be safe, and to give a power to crush our enemies with superiority.
וסיבה שלישית להפסקת האש.
And the third reason for the ceasefire now.
ניתוק הזירה ובידוד החמאס. מהיום השני של המלחמה,
He's saying to isolate Hamas. Let's see what he means by that.
החמאס בנה על חיזבאללה שילחם לצידו.
Hamas counted on Hezbollah to fight at its side, and now they're going to be divided.
וכשחיזבאללה מחוץ לתמונה,
Right, when Hezbollah is outside of the picture,
החמאס נותר לבד.
Hamas is going to be
במערכה.
alone in this war, and therefore, what he's saying is divide and conquer. Hezbollah, you sit out this round. We're going to deal with Hamas. We're going to deal with Iran. We'll deal with you later.
הלחץ שלנו עליו יגבר, וזה יסייע למשימה.
The pressure that we will be able to therefore put on Hamas will be greater, and that way we'll complete the task,
הקדושה של שחרור חטופינו.
the holy task of getting our hostages released. In other words, I don't want to fight a two-front war right now, or at least a kinetic two-front war right now. I want to sit these guys to the side, focus on Hamas, focus on Iran, and maybe we'll deal with Hezbollah later.
אזרחי ישראל,
As citizens of Israel, this is like a wrap-up here.
בשנה האחרונה הפכנו את הקערה על פיה.
In the last year, we were able to flip the pot on its head.
הותקפנו בשבע חזיתות,
We were attacked on 7 fronts, maybe even more if you count American campus, international anti-Semitism, media. But in any case, in kinetic war, we were attacked in 7 different fronts.
והשבנו מלחמה שערה.
And we returned a vociferous war against our enemies.
אנחנו משנים את פני המזרח התיכון.
We, throughout this war and our attack strategy, are changing the face of the Middle East. It's changing in front of our eyes.
את כל זה אנחנו עושים בזכות החיילים הגיבורים שלנו.
All this we are achieving through the heroic soldiers of ours,
בזכות העמידה האיתנה שלכם,
in the merit of the citizenry standing strong,
ובזכות הניהול התקיף והמושכל של המלחמה.
and with management of the war, which is thought through and at the same time aggressive.
אמרתי פעמים רבות,
I've said many times,
הסכם טוב זה הסכם שאוכפים אותו.
a good agreement is one that is policed, is kept, is applied, and not a loose one, a strong one.
ואנחנו נאכוף אותו.
And we will indeed implement this ceasefire, and we'll make sure that its contours are kept. We're gonna be tight on it.
בעזרת השם,
With the help of God,
נבסס את הביטחון,
we will give foundations to the security.
נפריח את הצפון,
We will once again make the north flourish,
ונמשיך יחד עד הניצחון.
and we will continue together until total victory, until victory. So that was a powerful and important policy speech by Prime Minister Netanyahu. As I said in the beginning, he looked a little nervous to me because I know that he's going to face a lot of criticism. Folks in the north want to go back to a safe north. And when we talk about the north, we're really talking about communities that are just, foundational communities, like essential communities of Israel, like everything from Tzfat to Haifa to Kiryat Shmona. And so many of them have either been evacuated or just live in a lot of fear. And so this is a big deal what he's saying. He's saying, I'm willing to go to a ceasefire. A lot of people are not happy. So let me read to you just one response that I saw here. And that response was from a mayor in the north. And the mayor basically says, it's the mayor of Kiryat Shmona. He says, when you evacuated us from our homes without an evacuation plan, it was a failure, but we cooperated. When you left us scattered in hundreds of communities without proper support, it was a failure, but we survived despite the government. When you started planning to return us home with a gap of tens of billions of shekels from what we needed, it was a failure, but we continued to fight so that there would be a proper return plan. But now that you are proposing for us to return to the reality of October the 6th, i.e. a lack of security, so that our sons will be taken prisoner, our daughters raped, and our houses burned down, we will not agree, we will not return, we will not cooperate with the surrender agreements. And he goes on to actually say, I will agree to return to residents if they fulfill one of the two conditions, a northern referendum, a referendum that will decide the fate of the agreement, or that the cabinet members who support the agreement will move with their families to Kiryat Shmona today, i.e. proving that they really believe that the north is now safe. So Prime Minister Netanyahu is definitely going to face an uphill battle from many people in Israel who are not going to feel that they're going to receive the safety and security that they deserve and that they can go back to living a normal life in the north of Israel like in Kiryat Shmona. On the other hand, Prime Minister Netanyahu laid out those three reasons, those rationales, that he can focus on Iran, focus on Hamas, and get a necessary re-equipment, some rest for our forces, a tight focus on Hamas and Iran, get all the new equipment that we need from the next administration. And in a sense, he might be also saying, listen, right now there's too much pressure from this administration. Let's take a break here with Hezbollah, and let's wait for the next administration to give a massive green light. Of course, a painful thing to say because Israel should always be acting with sovereignty and with its own best interests. And I think that he faces a tremendous amount of pressure. There's discussion with France, that France will take part in making sure that the ceasefire is implemented properly. You know, it's not like I love the idea of the French ensuring our security or anybody else. Israel's got to be sovereign. Israel's got to stand alone. Israel's got to do it its best interests and ensure that its enemies are destroyed and decimated. I don't like the idea of even having agreement with Hezbollah because at the end of this war, they should simply not exist. They should simply not be there. And the folks in the north are saying that this agreement will not give us that satisfactory sense of safety. But on the other hand, the three reasons that Prime Minister Netanyahu laid out have an internal logic. I can understand it, and I can understand him saying, listen, we're going to deal with this later. But on the other hand, there's all these people that are they going to be able to really go back home now, or are they going to have to be part of that, deal with it later? And I guess my last point is, this is what happens. This is what happens when you allow 7 fronts to be built up against you. This is what happens when you allow Hamas to build up an infrastructure underneath your nose and allow Qatari money to come through you to fund your enemies and the tunnels that they built. This is what happens when your intelligence is so full of hubris that it doesn't believe that the enemy right before their eyes is dangerous. And this is what happens when you allow hundreds of thousands of rockets to be built up in the north. And when you allow Iran to create an infrastructure in Yemen and in Iraq and in South Lebanon and in Gaza and in Judea and Samaria. And so there's been tremendous failures that have led to this day. Is this a tactical mistake, or is this actually a tactical smart step? It's hard to tell. The Bible tells us that we have to not curse our leaders. And so therefore, I'm not going to curse my leader. In many ways, Prime Minister Netanyahu is a great leader. And in other ways, he has also allowed the situation to boil to the place where it is today. And he certainly has to clean it up. Let us finish up this broadcast with a prayer that Prime Minister Netanyahu and the army have a full understanding that we need that victory. We need to clean the good land of Israel from the haters that have taken root in so many of its places in and around our country. We have to push back those enemies, and we have to be a nation that has the ability to live in peace in this land, and so that therefore we could serve God and be a light unto the nations and be that. And we've got to push back on those dark forces that have taken so much of our land and so much of our time and so much of our economy. It's time to use this opportunity to destroy our enemies. Unlike King Saul, who was unable to finish up the Amalekites, we have to finish up the today's Amalekites and Philistines and haters and jihadists, whatever you want to call them. Israel should not be surrounded by haters and enemies within and without. It's time to destroy them. If this ceasefire leads to that destruction, good. And if it weakens us, like the critics that Prime Minister Netanyahu himself talked about it, then that's bad. So let's pray to God, the God of Israel, that Israel will continue to be strong and use this moment to, in fact, get stronger. Thank you for so much for helping us get stronger. One of the ways that you can help us is by helping us keep broadcasting from the land of Israel and to broadcast the story of the land of Israel. One way is through buymeacoffee.com/Yishai. Just buy me a coffee. It's a spiritual coffee. It makes all the difference. And another way is through fightforisrael.org, which is my various projects to strengthen the land of Israel, to send Torah throughout the world. And you could be part of that. That's Fight for Israel. And you've got to say about yourself that you are a fighter for Israel. I fight for Israel, fightforisrael.org. And finally, the Jewish community of Hebron is where the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs is. I work there as the spokesman, and it's a place that all of us should visit and connect to. It's holy, it's ancient, it's Jewish, it's biblical, and we should get rid of jihadism and allow it to be the pilgrimage site that it's supposed to be. Check out hebronfund.org and be part of the support system. All right, folks, God bless you. God bless my team. God bless all the good folks. Sending you love and blessings and the light of Jerusalem from the good land, the land of Israel. God bless you wherever you are, and shalom.